Commissar, now that you nisamele abanyo comrade to join, I think from my vantage point, man, the issue here, organizational renewal, specifically directed to ex-combatants, MK in particular, as the organizational resource. It is a plea from us who are deployed abroad, given the changed geo-economic situation which we see, and the push also by those whose policies, run counter to us. And I think it's a call to arms to all of you, Commissar, to try to bring in a new impetus in the Unity Conference of MK, but also MK and Commissars also to begin marching closer to the ANC to be that organizational resource. To me, that's the political mainstreaming which ANC really miss and needs. So, Commissar Mulelo, ndiyaneva ama-commander and ndiyaneva ama-commissar, but ziyabuya lapha kwi-UN, and we really wish we are hardening up a movement, because a revolution in South Africa led by ANC require a stronger ANC and a stronger South Africa, because South Africa is a strategic locomotive. And with the changing global order now, post-Ukraine, it therefore require a much more focused ANC, a much more unified MK-MVA or MK itself, era. These are my greetings from New York. Yes.
Do you want to respond to that, Moss?
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are. I think we might as well probably start this, possibly use this as a kickoff, because in the main, it touches on some of the issues that we wanted to discuss today. Anyway, so the fact that it's starting from a different angle, I think we're flexible enough to actually just use it as a kickoff, and then of course, those comrades who have actually prepared to give specific inputs as part of the panel, like Castro, Sally, possibly Johnny, and possibly myself, and anybody else, can actually do so. But I say must respond, and then we use that as a way of starting the session.
Okay, now thanks, Comrade Malik. I think I want to concur with you. These things are interlinked, and to the extent that we can then find a way in which, in answering Comrade's Papi, we put them in the body of what ought to be the purview of the conference that's coming, because we can't ignore the international dynamic in a conference of MK, let alone the ANC. Having said that, as a foregrounding sort of statement, my take is simple, is that we all say that we live in a globalized world. We all say that this globalized world has made matters of national security to be a purview of the global security architecture. So our country cannot disengage or ignore what's going on in Ukraine and other parts of the world, both in terms of direct and indirect impact of those developments to us. So Comrade Kezani is phoning me. Can I Can I pick up his phone? I'll come back.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think in the meantime, I can actually just um, provide a link so that at least I can actually just hand over to some of the comrades in the meantime. My take is that this is a very fundamentally important question. I have received. I mean, I'm not in the diplomatic corps or whatever, but obviously I actually have got a whole lot of comrades that I interact with, Asia, Europe, and elsewhere. And the period that they're in now, they are actually struggling at times, feeling completely exposed, having to make answers on their own, with less guidance. And at times they feel there is a difference of view, whether you're listening to the government, you're listening to foreign affairs, government as in the presidency, you're listening to foreign affairs or listening to the ANC, all confused messages. Now, obviously, that talks to some of the issues that we are all aware of struggling with, that the ANC is specifically challenged and struggling in these equations. Now, there are certain problems though. The biggest challenge for exMK specifically is the fact that we're not a league recognized structure of the ANC from a political point of view, where we could actually be represented in the power tables and be able to present a specific position on renewal and all this type of thing. So we're like look outside looking inwards. So then the question becomes less of what we can do, because no doubt in exMK you have got a wealth of the highest concentration, if you like, of highly trained politically, trained cadres from a political point of view, who actually are dynamic enough to be able to do proper analysis and be able to provide necessary interventions. Now, but that capability sitting outside the ANC, I posed a similar question in some way at the beginning, but as a general question. A question that actually said, what is the general view on the renewal of the ANC? There is a committee already started there. I saw some form of representation, various leagues of the ANC. And maybe except Comrade Joel, if I read well, I couldn't see any exMK in it. But we also know that Comrade Joel is as exMK as Mandela was, for instance, because he has been more on active service than actually being in close contact with any exMK grassroots to actually get the vibe and the feel of what the body of exMK members would actually be like. So he would be more closer to power corridors than closer to MK corridors post 94. And that's just the reality of some of the comrades we'll actually find within the NEC of the ANC and of course, in Parliament. So then the challenge we have there is the reality that some of these problems happened when they were there and there was not much response. But most importantly today is, what is it that practically we can be able to do, given the fact that the ANC is not reaching out to us for any help? It is actually continuing with its program and processes without us. So that's one part that I wanted to just flag out as we're waiting for Moss, and of course for the debate to actually continue, reflecting specifically on the exact role of this new entity that we actually want in all these dynamics, of course, the bigger context being the ANC, the country, and the world as it is today. Moss, you are back. I was just warming up your seat.
Yeah, I'm back. I might have missed. Kezan is joining us in a minute. I sent him maybe a link and he wasn't aware, but he's joining us. So I'll be very brief because I want to concur with you and also understand Comrade General Sizani. What's going on? Can you help us, Malik? What's going on? No, you're not.
Yeah, go ahead. It's muted now. Yeah, he's muted, Moss. You can go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I was saying that I think you are correct in surmising that.
What is it saying?
The issue of we can't ignore the global environment, and therefore the request by General Sizani for us to look at how we can reinforce their efforts as deployees outside the country, who pursue a dual role of representing the state on the one hand, and by extension, the foreign policy strategy of the ANC in the state.
Yeah, okay, sure.
And in that context, then I think it's a fair request and a fair demand in relation to this group to respond to his request. My take is that we may want to advise General Wuti. We have had a series of papers that we've discussed. Within the context of MK role in the ANC, this is where this topic is well situated. The request can be addressed through that. A paper was developed before the Ukraine-Russian crisis. And that paper did understand that we operate within the context of a global environment in which what we do has got direct, what happens in the world and vice versa, there's a dialectical connect. And therefore it cannot be that the ANC can be indifferent on global issues, especially in the context of national security and our national interests. So that has been discussed in various papers. There's a paper that was done by 60. There was a paper that was done on commissariat, which also reflects on some issues. There was a paper that was talking to the MK role done by Mujaki in the ANC. So all those resonate well with giving expression to the request by Comrade Oba. What we didn't do, and perhaps what is required, which is much more pragmatic and real, is making it relevant to the current conjuncture, where we're dealing with Ukraine-Russian crisis that has generated a qualitatively new environment in the geopolitics of the world. And in that context, then we may have to say, what is our role as commissars in influencing the ANC in shaping and positioning the country in our national interests and national security interests in the changing environment? Surely there's no doubt that the world will never be the same again. Surely there's no doubt that the Cold War environment with dominance of America is under question, if not crumbling. There's no doubt that the NATO influence in the multilateral security instruments is being questioned. There's no doubt that the United Nations, people are beginning to question, is the United Nations best designed to deal with the current changing environment? And all of those and many others, whether in the African Union and other multilaterals, the fundamental question is the world is changing. If it is changing, what are its implications politically, socially, and to us specifically? Politically in the context of the ANC policy, ideologically in terms of where do we make South Africa stand in a comparative and competitive advantage? Because surely there will be benefits, but there can also be detriments in a changing environment. And I must then say, as I close, Comrade Pat, I don't think we have, in a very structured, systematic way, applied in our minds adequately, intelligently, in answering this in the context of the era of American let me say, Ukraine and Russian crisis. Maybe then I may suggest that to open it up for discussion. That is, to discuss the topics I tried to tease out, which create a space for us. We might want to say, even in the discussion today, we make a deeper reflection of what is the role of the new structure of MK that we're envisioning, and its design going to assist in dealing with global matters that affect the country and our people, and by extension, the ANC and the alliance. So in that sense, I can say, yes, we have a space. We didn't create it in a structured and focused manner as we ought to do. And your imploring us to do that is not misplaced. In fact, it's more than relevant. And therefore, I want to submit that I think let's put a few ideas for now, do more research, and come with much more succinct proposals on what conference can deliberate on behalf of Umkhonto weSizwe Legacy and Heritage, but also on behalf of commissars. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Moss. Welcome, Brian. Sorry, it does look like there was a bit of confusion. Moss says you didn't have the link I had sent you, and maybe you didn't get it. Apologies, but welcome you here now. So we can actually just move ahead. We have delayed because obviously we're trying to make sure that everybody is here. What Moss has actually done was to respond to General Cizane's question on politics and MK. What we need now to do is to refocus this discussion in line with the brief that we actually had. And then, of course, it means we are going to start narrow, and then we can open it up, going forward. Narrow as in answering the question that was actually asked in the flyers we have, because that is the brief that we had, as in saying what is it, what is the purpose or the mission really of the new entity that must emerge out of the conference. So that's effectively that. We need to answer that question first, and then of course we can look at all these other implications, politics and everything else, based on the answer we would have actually given. Is there anyone who wants to start? Castro, Sally, and Brian, and of course Johnny as well. You might as well join the fight, if need be, or anybody else for that matter. Moss, your hand is up.
Yeah, before they start, I would have liked to, so that we have much.
Yeah, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying that I wanted to make two remarks before they start, so that we then have a framework within which we design our engagement. The first one is, I think we are discussing structure, having discussed various aspects of policy and strategy, which is the right methodology, because structure follows strategy and policy. Secondly, we're also discussing in the context of a vacuum of a very critical basic document, a constitution, because MKNVA, by dissolution, which was the only one, MK National Council didn't have a constitution. Anyway, it was not a constitutional structure. There's no constitutional framework as a fundamental document that makes us have departure points of principles. So in that context, then, let us also then be alive to the fact that the discussion today should assist us in finding a way in which we say, what is this structure going to be in relation to the envisaged constitution and policy direction or trajectory? What is this structure going to prioritize in relation to its task and mandate? What is this structure going to assist us in managing the transition from the past MKMVA and National Council into a sustainable structure that will endure the test of time? So in that context, then, I think we have been able to discuss with your subject to your correction. I think this conference ought to be having a thinking on a structure that's going to give us a basis on which we say it is understood to be primarily focusing on socio-economic needs of our cadres. I think that we stated as a principle, because in the past, the paradigm of leadership choice was about access to power, resources, and corruption. And therefore, this one ought to have a structure that emerges completely from a different departure point. The second point we've made, I'm just reconfirming so that we start knowing that what we've already agreed on. The second one was we cannot ignore the fact that we as commissars and MK in general are political animals. And therefore, we've got a duty as we deal with socio-economic matters to assist and advise the new renewal program of the ANC in the context of organizational renewal, how it can be approached in a changing environment. I felt I should say that so that we're not discussing abstract and outside of a framework. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mos.
Sure.
Brian, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I don't mind.
Okay, sure.
I think in the last engagement, I raised a couple of questions that we need to honestly pay attention to addressing. One, I said we need to first understand who is responsible for us as military veterans. Whether we, as embedded within ANC, now I'm talking about MK, but if you go out of that and you go into SANVA position our role differently, and not necessarily away from the ANC, but slightly above, because it is we find the expression. The issue of socio-economic upliftment, issue of building peace and stability, as well as enhancing sustainable development. If you go through the policy documents of the ANC, you'll find all those embedded within the ANC program, whether it's the manifesto or any other. But these are national issues that we're dealing with, that SANVA has placed under government, basically to say, government, we are under you through DMV and SANVA, but we need to then begin to champion those issues at that level. So that's why it's important how we begin to look at the outside world, meaning from the ANC looking outside, that it's not only people that need to be led through formal political parties, but we have a responsibility nationally as military veterans to look at the issues of socio-economic upliftment, building peace and stability, as well as enhancing sustainable development. But also it goes further to say, work in partnership with all sectors of society, including business, labor, civic society, civic society community at large. Now, that does not end there, but it also goes on to say, consistently advocate for resolutions of socio-economic and political needs of military veterans. Now, it's either we choose to advocate or to execute this responsibility from within the ANC embedded. But we know that embedded in the ANC, we don't have the space to actually engage in these issues as military veterans. We do have space to engage as ANC members through other structures, whether from the branch, wherever we find a representation. But in terms of military veterans, we need to begin to say, how do we become an interface between the ANC, the government, and our people? Because our people rely on these issues that are raised here, that we've got to become exemplar. If loyalty cannot be demonstrated by military veterans to the country and the constitution, then we have a problem. Because then that level of advocacy cannot be left to people that never participated in the struggle that today want to claim to be champions of change. Because there is void. So there's that vacuum that is there that we need to begin to close. But we can only do that once we lift the ANC head, MK head, put it down and say, we are members of the ANC. Even if we're not MK, but if these were the responsibility given to us to execute in society, then our behavior and attitude needs to actually be aligned to that responsibility. So just imagine if these were issues raised by OR Tambo as a directive to us, how we're going to respond. It's very, very important so that we don't find ourselves embedded in the ANC. We can't breathe in the ANC. We can't articulate our this thing the way we see things. But we still want to continue to say our duty is to transform the ANC. It is true we have that duty as members of the ANC, individually as members of the ANC. But SMK, we don't have expression. I know Comrade Castro raised a very, very key issue. And I think that it might become an answer to a number of things. He said, those who can should bubble up and move into the Veterans League. But also that structure still needs to be reformed in a way, needs to be renewed. So it means the issue of emergence of a cadre, it cuts across, whether it's in the Veterans League, wherever. A certain a group of cadreship needs to bubble up and actually take the bull by the horse and transform the organization. So I'm just saying we need to look at it that the same responsibility is also to transform society. So whether we use the ANC as the vehicle or we use another, but the thing is, our duty is to transform society. So repositioning ANC is trying to redirect the energies of society towards a particular direction. So I want us to look at it from that angle to say, it doesn't matter whether how we structure the MKMVA, but how far can we go out there and influence? Because if you look at it, that responsibility also goes into your military veteran space. Your CMVO and all these other people are benefiting, we're not benefiting the way they're benefiting. So issues of inequality, deprivation, and stuff like that is still there. But all of us, we belong under the Department of Defense and Military Veterans. So it is very, very important that we need to begin to say, is SANVA the ideal vehicle to use to transform or impact society from that angle, right? Or are we comfortable to run as MK, and how far can we influence? Because SANVA does give us space to lead. But remember, even SANVA is our vehicle that we still have to go and lead. So we seem not willing to go and lead SANVA because maybe there are white people there or former enemies and stuff like that. I think we need to change that attitude, just to say, how do we then ensure that our role within SANVA is actually felt by society? We can redirect all the things that are going wrong within the defense and military veterans sector and make a change there. Remember, we have our comrades that are still in defense who are looking at us to say, maybe through us, we must still see some kind of change or transformation within the South African National Defense Force. But that responsibility sits with us as military veterans because we are legally bound to engage formally with these structures. So I'm just saying, I think we need to deal with that issue first, to saying, where do we want to position ourselves? Without losing our identity of the ANC. We'll remain ANC individually as members of the ANC. I belong to a branch, so is many other people belonging to the branch. But MKMVA does not. So the MKK do not have a platform where they can engage even the ANC and earn that respect. So I'm just saying, let's look at it before we even talk about structure. But how would we make sure that we balance our responsibility in the ANC, in SANVA, and out there in society? Maybe let me stop there so that we can engage on these other issues as other comrades make inputs.
And I'm sure that as you close, I'm sure when you say MKMVA, you're not
No, it's a mistake. No. I was saying MK, not MKMVA.
It's a very pregnant mistake, but let's fine. I understand.
No, it's a slip of a tongue. Yeah, basically MK.
Okay, thanks, Comrade Brian. Castro or Commissar Sali, any of you want to react to what you've heard?
Thank you, Doc. Good evening, comrades. Yeah, I will approach this issue by looking at the question that we were to answer. Let me just open it, sorry. What does it say? What is the mission? Can you please repeat it, Commissar?
You mean the question?
Yeah, the topic.
Okay, just 1 second. Let me just have it so that at least I have exactly what
I have it now. It says, what should the purpose or mission of the new MK veterans structure be? And I actually go in line with what Comrade Brian is saying. Even Commissar Moss has said it, that before we can even talk structures, we need to know what our identity is. So for me, before we know what our identity is even, we need to be able to identify what our reason of existence is. Before we can do anything, our raison d'être, that's how they call it in French, meaning that really you will not exist if there was not this situation that you were supposed to exist for. Now, for me, really, it's a situation of saying, I want to believe that any association of veterans, even anywhere in the world, is established so that it can ensure that those who were involved in combat are efficiently integrated into society. And integrating into society has a host of issues that need to be taken care of. You will find some of them as expressed in the Military Veterans Act in Chapter 5, because you will not be able to integrate these people who were involved in combat without addressing those issues. Now, what is glaring in our own experience is that for all this period until now, we have not zoomed in and taken our responsibilities as veterans to ensure that indeed our structure that was responsible for us, which is the council or the association, they did not ensure that they maximize and they take advantage even of the state instruments that are available for us to ensure that all these things that are supposed to assist in reintegrating our comrades into society are happening. And I do want to also embrace the fact that indeed, as the products of the ANC, we cannot watch our movement being annihilated in front of our eyes, but not react and try to resuscitate it. But I want to believe that if we take the approach of when you are in an aeroplane, where you are told about the oxygen mask that may drop when the air pressure is unbalanced, you first have to put that on yourself. It is then that you can even put it on your child, meaning you cannot try to save your child before you are sure of the fact that you are stable enough to can be able to do that. I think at this point, this is where we are at when you look at our situation and the situation of the mother body. This is crunch time. This is how I look at it. So what comes into my mind is the issue of saying, it looks like when we look at the heading of today, what should be the mission or the purpose of the structure that we want. We need to be looking at the crunch time that we are at this moment. We have 2024 that is coming. And indeed, our mother body is in a vulnerable position, which needs all hands on deck. But by saying that at the same time, it means the existence and the position that we may find ourselves in, especially the liberation forces, is that if the ANC may lose its majority in parliament, we may find that even what we wanted to review in the Military Veterans Act were unable to do because we don't have enough majority. I'm making a case of saying it is more than 8 years this year since, in my knowledge, I don't know if there were other attempts before, but in my knowledge, it is more than 8 years that there were inputs that were made to the Military Veterans Act so that the Act would favor and give conducive conditions for our Liberation Forces veterans to be able to really benefit out of that. Now, in 2024, that would be 10 years. as we speak, we do not have enough advocacy of that focus of saying, we know who we are, we know why we are existing, therefore we prioritize to ensure that the instruments that the state has already given us are utilized to the max in benefit of our veterans. So right now we are in this situation of, yes, we want to save our mother body, but if we totally focus on that as a formation, not as individuals, as a formation, totally focus on that, we run the risk of, if God forbid, indeed our mother body loses power, it means actually whatever chance that we had to redress the lost time that we had since the promulgation of the Military Veterans Act, it would mean we have also lost out at that. So for now, I will just stop there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sally. Fidelito?
Comrade Sally,
Yes,
just for purposes of accuracy, né?
yes.
Because I think you're making a very mute point about time lost and its implications for the future. The Act was formally promulgated in 2011.
Yes.
So it is actually even more than the period you're talking to.
Sure.
And so the implication of the risk is even higher.
Mm.
That there needs to be a definitive will on the part of the employees and the executive and the ANC to see the reality that the Enabling Act will help us to help the ANC by addressing the issues. So let's put that point as a very clear point. We have an Act in 2011, not changed at all, with all the cries, the demonstrations, the petitions, still the same. And the consequences that those who fought for freedom are benefiting less than those who fought against freedom. So 2011 becomes a point, not 2014. Thank you.
Castro? Go ahead, Nyamaza.
Thanks, Commissar. Actually, based on what has been said so far, I don't identify any element of exclusivity. I see them all being consistent with what we have been actually envisaging all along. That we need to build a structure that basically and primarily looks at our interests as exMK cadres. Those interests might be maybe socio-economic, maybe political, maybe historical, cultural, and otherwise. But this structure must look for our interest as a MK community and make sure that as MK community we have a common voice towards all aspects or areas that we want to engage. Now, based on that, is that it doesn't have or create a challenge to then move as MK from, for example, if I take it on the basis of levels, that is exMK and the structure that we will have, we can engage the ANC on issues that are pertinent to our interest as exMK within the ANC family. In that score is that unfortunately, due to the fact that we are not a structure that is recognized politically or constitutionally as one of the leagues, or that has a say perhaps in terms of determining the trajectory of the ANC. It then means, therefore, that our focus basically within the mother body of the ANC, or the ANC as a father, as we used to explain it in terms of civil-military relations, that the ANC was a father of the FMK in terms of determining its revolutionary activities. The main element here is that we should project our interest within the ANC. But in terms of the political aspect of it, the trajectory that the ANC should take, I think we become limited, therefore, as a structure that is not constitutionally recognized. This means, therefore, we need to have a political home where we will be able to influence the ANC in terms of the direction that it's supposed to take. Hence, I actually proposed that we should look at the Veterans League accommodating exMK cadres as members of the Veterans League, perhaps even go to an extent of accommodating those I can term as young lions from the 1980s, who still have a challenge maybe of becoming fully fledged veterans or members of the Veterans League on the basis of their age, as well as on the basis of the number of years of service within the ANC. This is something that perhaps could be proposed as a way of trying to accommodate this young, relatively young, energetic constituency to assist the Veterans League in terms of ensuring that the project, unity and renewal, is successfully executed. The level that I was also talking about is that as exMK, when we deal with the state, is that there is a structure called SAMVA, which is a recognized structure legally, which as exMK we are part of. We are intrinsically part of. Therefore, as SAMVA being the structure that is supposed to deal directly with DMV on all military veterans associated issues. Therefore, we should play a very effective role. Actually, as exMK, we form one of the biggest entities. I don't know how big is CMVO, the one for the so-called statutory forces. But we form one big structure that can effectively influence the direction of SAMVA as well as DMV. So if we take it on the basis of levels, that is exMK, we are an entity that champions and advocates for our own interests. Then we are then able to then move from this base. It's a base that we're moving from, and then we can address all these other structures and entities from this base. The ANC being our father as revolutionary soldiers, of ex-revolutionary soldiers, can then be approached to actually ensure that our interests are pursued effectively as a party that is leading government currently. Although I don't know how it would be if it does happen that the ANC loses power, but it's something that we should avoid and fight as effectively as possible to make sure that it does not happen in the near future, so that our interests can be pursued effectively. I'll end there for now. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. I just want to ask a few questions, if possible, just for clarity, and then of course we then just open it up for debate. And anybody else, I mean, I know Johnny, you've got your own views, and you'll probably want to weigh in on this, but there are certain things that I just want to put out there, playing a devil's advocate for now, so that as we proceed, we can actually see how they probably impact our deliberations on this. There is the ANC-MK relationship before 94, when the ANC was a liberation movement. And there is the ANC-MK relationship post-94, where the ANC is effectively a state party, like a governing party. Now, I just wanted to actually just get a sense of whether, firstly, are we envisaging that the relationship hasn't changed in dynamics, like the ingredients of the relationships, even in the context of changed material conditions. I mean, like, I'm thinking of the MK oath as an example, in terms of who do we serve. That's something that I just needed clarity on that, because it is fundamentally important. And then the other one, is the issue of Sanva Castro. Just to give you a view, and I know Commissar Sally also made a reference to this, and so is Brian. For your information, MK is the second biggest, is not the biggest, in Sanva. The effectively the SADF and the TPVC would be the biggest, and over time Mandela soldiers would be the biggest, meaning as we move forward, those who joined fresh, as professional soldiers in 94, so MK will continue being the minority in Sanva. That is the point I wanted to make, to say that as we bring Sanva to the debate, I want us to keep that in mind. And in addition to that, I also want us to keep some of the dynamics within Sanva, where some of our own comrades are actually agitating towards, using Sanva as a horse that they're gonna ride for their own thing. So the Sanva MK leadership thing is not a guarantee. That's the point I wanted to make. And then lastly, again on the issue of the ANC and MK relationship in the context of the structure, that is of the new structure we have in mind. I just want a reflection on the durability, as to whether do we have in mind a new structure that will be as durable as the ANC is durable. So meaning, if, as it will happen at some point, it's normal. The ANC will be insignificant at some point in time. This is just normal evolution. No one can stop that. Now, are we then saying the new entity we want to build, it must have the same shelf life going forward as the ANC? So I just wanted to actually just raise those. Johnny, your hand is up. Maybe if you don't mind, let me just take Brian quickly in case he has got a follow-up point on his contribution, and then we can take yours as well, if you don't mind. I know your hand was up first. Brian?
Yeah, yes. Thanks, Comrade Malik. I just want to throw a spanner in the whole discussion. I'll just, as you were talking, something was going through my mind, that possibly we need to say, define the objectives of the new structure first, even before we can say what sort of a relationship we want. And I might go and say the first one is the rebuilding of the ANC. Just give an example. Then we can come to the other ones that are dictated to by SANVA, where we're talking about mobilizing military veterans to work together to contribute towards building social. I can't remember what was the wording there, but actually addressing issues of socio-economic development, building peace and stability, and enhancing sustainable development. I'm just giving an example that we put those as our objectives. And I'm raising these things because from the SANVA point of view, those are imposed on us, right? We're inheriting those from SANVA as things that we need to work towards. Now, if you take them back to MK, it basically says we have to live up to those objectives, unless we're going to say, no, we don't care about those, then we define our own. But those ones still, when we discuss within the ANC, still need to find expression. We need to refine those, that from the ANC perspective, how do you want to address these objectives? So even within MK, we need to then begin to say, what do we mean really by rebuilding the ANC? Right? What role do we need to play? What structure do we need to be able to do that? Whether we go, as Comrade Castro was emphasizing, the issue of the Veterans League, but we know that it also has its own problems. We must still have to negotiate the issues of age limit and stuff like that. Because if you're saying I have to be 40 years experience, and MK was disbanded so many years ago, so what is the relationship between there? But we need to begin to say, do we negotiate a special passage for MK veterans to fit in because of the circumstances around the issues of the disbandment of MK and stuff like that? But I'm saying, if we move from there and say, what is it that we're trying to address, right? Than being driven by things that we might not necessarily understand. But I'm just trying to suggest, to say, what is it that we think we need to address, or what are the objectives, things that we think we want to achieve? Then we can list those things and say, these are mandatory. We've inherited from SANVA, we can change them. But renewal of the ANC, as MK does, being born out of the ANC, it means it is an automatic duty. But then we can say the how part will begin to clarify how we're going to navigate some of these challenges that we have. Sure.
Okay, thanks for that. Johnny, go ahead, Big JM.
No, thanks, Comrade Malik, and thanks, comrades. For me, I think the starting point in responding to the question is that we need to understand what the question seeks to draw from us. When you talk of purpose, you are talking of a reason. And here we are talking about the reason that we must forward for the continued existence of an association of ex-combatants. That's the first thing. Why should we continue existing? Is the first question that we must answer. Having answered that, then we move to the next step. The next step is the creation. Because when you talk of rebirth, renewal, I hate the word renewal in any case. I prefer to use the word rebirth. When you talk of rebirth, you talk about creating a new structure. So here we are saying, coming out of the envisaged all-inclusive conference, what type of a structure should we create, and for what reason will we create that structure? If it's for purposes of defending the ground or our mother, who we have defined as the ANC, we then say, how are we going to do that? How are we going to defend the ANC if the constitution of the ANC does not even give us room to do that? Now, my point and my take is that when you look at this structure that we are talking about, its biggest role will be advocacy and awareness. Advocacy for the socio-economic welfare of ex-combatants, and to generally create an awareness within the community of ex-combatants as to what is it, what are those issues that concern them, that they can start lobbying and actually demanding, as opposed to what we have seen happening in the past. But very critical to that, in this renewal process, what is it that we want to renew? Do we want to renew the ANC, or do we want to renew an association that will look after the interest of ex-combatants? And my answer to the question is, we want to renew both. But how do we do it? First and foremost, I believe the fact that the ANC is apparently going to a national conference without having gone through a national general council and probably not going to go through a policy conference. Because one of the ways that we could start with this renewal process was if we influence the type of policies that we are going to have to take. But before we even influence the type of policies that we are going to take, we need to start to say, what are the policy directions that we have agreed upon in the past? And how far have we gone in implementing those policies? And of those policies, which are those policies that have a direct interest to ex-combatants? Concomitantly, I want to say, we need to start looking at that the ANC as it exists today, structurally, not in terms of its life, structurally, how it's formed with the branches that are aligned to government structures, wards, and all those sorts of things. Does it serve the purpose that will ensure that we, as ex-combatants, are able to navigate through the structures of the ANC to our own benefit? Or is the existence of structures of the ANC as they are today an impediment to us as combatants realizing our worth? And I will respond by saying, maybe it's about time that we look at the ANC as two organizations. One, ANC in government as a political party, and ANC continue as a liberation movement. So that when you say Luthuli House is the headquarters of the ANC, what it means is that the ANC as a political party is accountable to a structure in Luthuli House. Let me give you an example. Comrade Gweremantashe is the national chairperson of the ANC. Which minister can he hold accountable when all ministers are his colleagues, because he is a minister? So who is going to hold him accountable? I was somewhat a bit happy when I saw the body that they put together as the disciplinary committee of the ANC. What makes me happy is that most of those people in that body are not members of the ANC. As opposed to a situation where you have the person heading the appeal body of discipline being a member of the NEC. So what if one day you are supposed to take that person to DC, and this person is the chairperson of the National Disciplinary Appeal Committee? So in short, most of the things that the comrades have raised, I tend to be sympathetic to. There's a number of them that I would have a problem with, but I don't think the purpose of this discussion is for us to begin to look at what areas do we differ with, but look at how best do we compact this thing to ensure that the structure, because I think for me that is the most important thing. to the conference, what type of a structure do we want to come back with? I think Comrade Brian hit it on the nail when he said objectives that we envisage to achieve through the national conference would be the drivers of the direction the national conference has, as opposed to these other things as to who get into what position. That should actually happen even on the last day of conference if you want to make any meaningful contribution to the welfare of the ex-combatant. Let me rest there, Comrade Malik and Comrade. Thank you.
Thanks, Comrade PJ. Comrade Motomen.
Leadership, good evening. Do you hear me, comrade?
Very well.
Yes, we do. Yes.
Well, thank you very much. Leadership, I just wanted to appeal, and please pardon probably my being, my verbosity when dealing with the socio-economic development issues. The question that probably is now being raised is, what type of structures or substructures do we need in the new structure that we envisage? The socio-economic welfare development structure, whichever way you call it, it's a very critical area that we must look at. It's very critical because directly or immediately it seeks to address the welfare issues of Milvets. Not only on social conditions, but also on economic welfare of the comrades. Remember that we are talking here probably of individuals who may seek employment as an individual. We are talking here of a situation where we find the comrades have structured themselves in the form of cooperatives and PO, etc. But those things seem not to have a meaning as things currently stand. They don't have a meaning because there is no synergy. Synergy, whether at a national level, provincial, or regional level. You come to a branch. In the normal branches of the African National Congress, you would find these subcommittees, probably which deal directly with this very matter of a socio-economic issues. But the linkage ought not necessarily be so preoccupying itself narrowly on the Milvet community per se, because our role is to see to it, as Umkondo says, to see to it, how do we transform our societies through the vehicle of the African National Congress. Now, this structure, in my view, or in a not ordinary logical point of view, is that it should permeate province, regional, and even local municipalities. As you look, of course, on this district model that is coming about. Critical its role would be, you should have a way, mechanism to monitor, evaluate, and of course implement policies that comes from the Conference of the African National Congress. Let me make an example. There is a very disjuncture between local economic development desk within various municipalities across the country. A disjuncture with the departments, for an example, of you come to agricultural, rural development, they are working in silos. How then can we find a way, as Umkhonto Sizwe, whether there is a continuity in perpetuity in the existence of Umkhonto, probably at this very juncture, it might be neither here nor there, because whether we still have a structure called Umkhonto Wesizwe, veterans, whatever. But in essence, our role still has got to be carried true, whether we are coming as in
We're losing you, my chief. Motorman, we have lost you.
You have lost me.
Perhaps he should, maybe he should remove the video.
Yeah, do you want to remove the video? Maybe it might help.
But you still hear me?
We can hear you now.
Hello? Okay. Now the issue then, comrades, is this, the second part, of course, critically so. The second part of my probably quest to have a contribution on the question of MK vis-a-vis Veterans League. I think the timing is very, very good, because from the look of things, MK communities ought to have its conference before the Veterans League conference. Whatever we raise, or rather we seek to have a way of nullifying the 40-year or the 60-year rule in a particular way, because we, of course, it's understood and accepted that we come from a unique kind of community as military veterans. There should be a way, and that proposal must, of course, be carried through and be supported by Veterans League comrades. Some of them are from the MK, some of them have a long-standing record or profile within the ANC itself. Our role or our situation cannot be very difficult, because the issue of being a very concerned about what is actually going on in the Veterans League, it's, of course, the matter that is permeating across the whole leagues or the whole structures of the African National Congress. It means that, therefore, part of the renewal, part of the contribution that we ought to make towards renewal must also find its way in through and through the Veterans League. I think that link, Comrade John is asking for the link. The link is there from this structure and the branches. Continuity, the continuity ought to be there, because we, within branches from Umkhonto Wesizwe, let me also add before I got lost, I got out of the line. Leadership, maybe the issue of voting rights should not be the main issue that concerns ourselves. This structure is recognized by the NEC. It's recognized even the highest decision-making body, the General Election or rather conferences of the African National Congress. There should be a way, without having that special right, to be able to advise, to be able to influence, to be able to give our own experiences as Umkhonto Wesizwe within the ANC, because the voting issue, yeah, I think we should agree. It's not the main concern. The main concern is the content, the quality of our contribution in the renewal of the ANC and in the direction that the country ought to be taking.
Thanks, my chief. Thank you. Mhlongo?
Yes, Commissar. Commissioner Malike. I have a request, Commissioner Malike. My request is, if it's possible, from your side, as the facilitator and Commissioner Moss, is that if it's possible, let's discuss one item at a time. Discuss it. After discussing one item at a time, come to a consensus, a summary of it, and go to the next item. But if we mix all the items, we talk of all of them at the same time, we will not achieve much in terms of actually isolating each item and finalizing summary on each point, you know. So my proposal is, let's discuss the purpose and finish the purpose and have a summary of what the purpose of this organization is from the contributions. And then from there, we go to the next item. You know, after the purpose, we go to, if we have to go to renewal, then we discuss renewal. What should we do by renewal? What do we understand by renewal? And have a summary of that. But if we mix many things at the same time, we end up being confused because nothing can be summarized and be written down. So I propose that we discuss one item at a time and finish it and summarize it and go to the next item. Please, thank you. Bye-bye.
No, thanks. In fact, I was, before Motorman took over, that's what I wanted to do, was to actually just give a quick summary on the critical question. Why do we exist, or why do we want to actually exist effectively? You know, the reason for our existence. Now, I mean, what I captured on the site, and of course, Moss and other comrades can actually correct that. It does look like there is a common thread, and that common thread says we actually exist for ourselves first. You know, to actually look after our own material interests. That's that. Now, of course, the other part is that we are not an island. We're part of an organization. We've got a history, you know, with the ANC. So we are struggling to define that relationship. That's where I'm actually looking at issues, that the relationship must continue and it must be there, but it looks like people are actually struggling with that, which is the next question, effectively, because you know, one of the things that has come out very clear out of all the speakers is the fact that once you actually answer the first question, what will always constrain your ambitions in that answer is how then do you achieve what you actually said. I exist for looking after our own benefits. Johnny said advocacy and of course making awareness about our situation, right? And of course, same language, or rather same theme, but slightly different language from other comrades on that. And then, of course, the question is, how do you achieve that? You know, and that will talk to what is it that you need to do in order to do that organizationally, structurally, and of course, Brian did mention the issue of objectives as another way of looking at it. You know, because then you know, those becomes the measurements. How do you measure? How do you know you've achieved what you wanted to achieve? That's what, from your objectives, you will actually be able to actually check out. So that's the summary I actually wanted to actually just give before then, and then be able to ring fence the issue of the relationship that comrades are struggling with, the relationship with the ANC. Moss, what is your take?
Thanks, Malik. I think you've really summarized it well. Just to reconfirm and reaffirm that indeed we exist primarily to make sure that what was a deficit since 1994 is fundamentally addressed by the structure, which means changing the conditions of our cadres for the better. And having said that, we then are saying that it is not done in isolation. We do it in the context of being revolutionaries. We have a duty to protect the organization. So there is a socio-economic task, there is a political stroke ideological task, which is to ensure that the ANC, which ought to find expression or give expression in government and within the alliance and civil society as a whole, is strong enough to drive that agenda. Therefore, we need to strengthen the ANC. It can't exist out of or side by side, but integral to the ANC. That's the political side that does. Thirdly, there is a dimension of societal development that we have a duty to. We didn't transform to make the ANC be legal. We didn't fight in order for us to have entitlements. We fought to change the lives of our people for the better, which I think Brian captured it well by saying sustainable community development in a context of a developmental state. So there are three tasks that we say are immediate and critical for the structure: socioeconomic issues, immediate political issues, and broader societal issues. Period. How we then, each one is dissected into programmatic things like legislative amendments, and them is really the how part of it. Why we exist are those three key ones. But then let me pick two key areas, just as we mull over now, moving towards other elements, if we now agree with the fact that we're answering that question properly. There is two things here. The structure, we are not envisioning it to be established and then it exists for a year. Ought to be able to know what is the structure's immediate tasks that it must be measured on, that it is indeed in the right track. So we have to define immediate tasks within the socio-economic, political, and whatever tasks we've outlined. And therefore we must then be agreeing that we have a vision of short, medium to long term of a structure that is durable and sustainable. So measure time factors and what priorities per epoch of that time becomes also a mission critical success factor in our thinking in terms of what the structure should do and by when. And then lastly on my side, then we put the last banner on the on the already complicated topic. It's quite complicated, comrades. We're navigating a terrain that we ought to have navigated in 1995, and we're doing it today. Comrades, there is the dynamic that has happened, which has got far-reaching implications that we actually are attending to. In the midst of challenges that have led to people getting disillusioned, crisis, and revolt of some sort, a new alignment of forces has emerged, to which MK and the new structure ought to speak very directly and very clearly on. The place and role and local standing of the local so-called Liberation War struggle veterans. Why I'm raising it is because this structure now, notwithstanding the fact that it is not there in the Act, it is not necessarily formalized, it has access to the highest office of the land. It talks to the president directly than even MK can do. Now, what are the implications of all this for the new structure to begin to say, how do we relate to these new developments? I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, okay, thanks. More questions, comrades, but there are certain things. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize that I was actually muted. Now, I was saying we would like to have more hands, but there are certain things that I want us to effectively be conscious of, because I'm not sure that there is a consensus on this. On the last 2 points you mentioned, the issue of politics and that is as a reason for us to exist, and the issue of society as a reason for us to exist. I'm not sure if on that there is a consensus yet. I actually just mentioned them because people actually touched on them, but they are not actually, unless this is what you are suggesting. This is the point I'm actually trying to make, so that this will hear you well. That you are effectively proposing, because no one has actually said it clearly as such, that we also exist for political reasons, and we all exist for societal reasons. So I just want clarity on that, because people mention those as context. I haven't heard them actually giving them as a reason for us to exist. Now, the one that has been quite clear as a reason is the issue of addressing social material conditions of the. It's a common thread. Everybody has actually stated this, meaning there is no dispute around it. But these two, I'm not sure if we can actually say we are at that level with them as yet. So I would like us to reflect on those. If not, so that at least I can capture it correctly on my side. Can we talk about now having sorted out the social welfare part, because there is no disagreement? Can we focus on these other 2 points that you mentioned? The issue of politics as a reason for us to exist. What does that exactly mean? Other than, of course, the fact that we are ex-political soldiers, answerable to the ANC. Now, the relevance of this question is that we have seen not long ago Minister Sisulu, for instance, with a faction of ex-MK community. I don't want to say MKMVA because MKMVA has been banned, disbanded. Disbanded just like all other ones. So, and we've seen that as a continuation of an old trend where ANC politicians, our own comrades, so to speak, will actually be coming to MK to actually push for these divisions for their own interest, effectively. They will play on this. So are we then saying by politics we will be continuing on that path? That's what I need to actually understand. Where we are going to declare on slates like KB used to do. We support this faction and not that faction. As KB used to do. And then two, linked to that question is the issue of whether what happens to the membership of an individual who then decides that the ANC does no longer serve his political interest. Say someone is a communist and they actually see the ANC as neoliberal. They move to a communist party that stands for elections. What does that mean in practical terms? In relation to the membership of that individual, having left the ANC as his political home and settled in the Communist Party as a political home, but being someone like you, being someone like Alex or whoever, I'm sorry, I'm just making a practical example. It could be me or anybody else, right? So that's why I just need a bit of clarity on the politics side, because it has got such a huge impact, not only on the nice and warm feeling about we are revolutionaries, we are political animals, there's no dispute about this. But are we then saying this structure will actually be pursuing a political program? That's one thing I wanted to actually get a sense of. Now, of course, the society as well, it will probably depend on what we mean. So maybe someone will also help us, on that, so that we can clearly nail this. But that one is relatively easier to understand for me than the first one, the political part. So if I can get help on that, Moss, or anyone, I would really appreciate it, so that we can capture it correctly.
Okay. May I speak?
Oh, yeah, no, go ahead, Brian. I'm sure Moss will at some point, or anyone, because it's not really his targeted at him, or anyone who can assist.
Yeah, maybe let's go back to what ANC declared about MK. Even though in the resolutions you'd see the name MKVA, it was pre the split or all those other issues, whatever we want to call it, where the ANC declared that MK was a resource. I'll substitute MKVA with MK as a resource to the ANC and the alliance partners. And we need then to unpack what was the expectation from the ANC when they said that. I think with all the sober minds put together in the conference, it was very, very clear that they looked at MK as a special grouping that will rise above the small petty divisions and stuff like that, and become and occupy the center and redirect the politics of the ANC. That will also talk to the issue of discipline. I think we need to move from that angle to say politically we looked at in terms of capacitating the organization and the alliance partners. By implications, it means we got to rise above these petty squabbles and divisions or slate politics and stuff like that. Basically, that's what it means in terms of political role. But we know that the expectation from the ANC has been that it was to grow and defend the ANC. So that extends actually that political responsibility of MK leadership to say, wherever you are, defend the ANC, the black, green, and gold, but also defend our people or our masses. So that was clearly clarified at that particular point. But let me just maybe raise this issue that in terms of societal is that I've raised earlier on to say, if you look at the Sanva, it talks about the issue of peace and stability. Being that special resource that is trained in the area of military warfare, there is an expectation that we could, if in the case of war, will automatically volunteer ourselves to defend the motherland, as an example, but also to plow these skills in various areas where, in government, where such skills might be required. So we need to balance. This is what the balancing act that we need to really have to say. There shouldn't be a contradiction or a conflict between our role in society and the role within the ANC. People should be able to understand the two responsibilities as well. There's a question that I raised in the earlier discussion, I think it was last week, when I said we need to be very, very careful and say, who is responsible for us? And we've seen comrades marching to ANC offices, Luthuli House, demanding many other things for military veterans. But surely we know that we're approaching an entity that does not have power to dispatch any of these government resources to anybody. It's only government institutions that are mandated to do so. And we're beginning to confuse these things, and we're confusing society that people tend not to understand why MK, wearing an MK uniform, a symbolic outfit, will march against the ANC provincial office or ANC head office. These are the things that we need to eliminate in the way we do business. Then we know that if we want to march, we're marching to government because they are responsible to dispatch these services, not the ANC as a political organization. We might have different battles internally within the ANC, but those must also be given context. Cannot create a situation that Comrade Mbulelo was talking about of this Liberation War Veterans structure. It does so, it was able to elevate itself because it was talking directly to people that are responsible for power and to dispatch services, which is government. That's why they will listen to them. Whilst MK will want to go and talk to the ANC because its members are in parliament. I think that was a disconnect that has put us in a very, very difficult position. That is why our divisions will also be exploited from within and redirected to support certain individuals. So I think we need to have a proper alignment so that there's no clash between what government is responsible for in relation to military veterans, our responsibility in government or in society as military veterans, because when we talk about issues of patriotism, people have to see these through us. We're the only people that can say we prepare to die for the country. Not many people will do that. They'll start to ask questions. We've gone beyond questions of a position of asking questions, but we're more at the point of saying what is it that you want me to do? They say, go to war, you'll go to war. So I'm saying that we need to balance this thing so that the structure itself, it does not get caught in issues of, for example, SDUs not being happy, wanting to protest within the ANC, demanding government services. And we are unable to redirect these energies and say, no, but this is the wrong way of doing it. But the War Liberation Veterans structure is doing so because nobody is holding them accountable politically. There is no political master in this case who will say, no, you are embarrassing me, or don't do it because we have not consulted with the structures. They do it because nobody can tell them, but it's only government that can respond. So I think this is what has actually come to the fore. But let me stop there, Comrade Malik.
Okay, sure. I know.
I'm done, Comrade Malik, or Comrade Moss.
Okay, no, thanks. I think Johnny was next one. I nearly asked him to give Comrade Sandile, but I realized that I did that before. So, Comrade Johnny, maybe go ahead.
No.
If you have done it again.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I would have gone to Limpopo and use blocks ready to get rid of Comrade Sandy because he always replaces me.
No, go ahead. You will understand.
Yeah, Comrade Brian, I think you are touching on something critical, but not to the logical conclusion of what I thought you were going to say. And this is where I think we need to take it. If the ANC sees the MK as a useful resource, then the next question is, where is this MK in the lexicon of the ANC located? Because it's not located in the constitution of the African National Congress. So that already tells you that you have MK as somewhat of a fraternal organization to the ANC, not even in alliance with the ANC. It's not a structure of the ANC. It might be a fraternal organization like the South African Council of Churches and so forth and so on. Now, if that is a fair understanding of where the MK stands in relation to the ANC, what I would strongly recommend, which will give the MK a better standing, locus standi within the African National Congress, would be, I think, coming out of the conference, we must begin to push for the ANC to actually, in a way, treat the MK as a desk more defined than it is now as just some group of people in the Secretary General's office. I think it must find expression somewhere. The same way that we have Peace and Stability Subcommittee. Why is that Peace and Stability Subcommittee, which almost does the same work as Umkhonto we Sizwe military veterans, not get maybe replaced by the, and I'm thinking aloud here. But coming back is that if the ex-combatants of Umkhonto we Sizwe define themselves first as members of the ANC, they might find themselves being questioned about those ex-combatants of Umkhonto we Sizwe who are no longer members of the ANC, because there are such people. One, you cannot deny them being ex-combatants of Umkhonto we Sizwe, but they are no longer members of the ANC. So I'm saying, when we define this, we should look at all corners and take it even further. The issue of Liberation War veterans is another thing. Remember, that is an amalgamation of different military formations. It's not only MK ex-combatants. I would rather not even look into, and I think it's taking an opportunistic stance. Sometimes you make just noise there, and then you get listened to by people at higher level. And I'm not even trying to say we must begin to do that, because what defines us should be discipline. Discipline, and not the things that have been always associated with MK combatants, where people see us as people who at the slightest provocation will be rolling over the tarmac and in combat and marching to the headquarters of the African National Congress, demanding something that has got nothing to do with the ANC, or the ANC has got no capacity to deliver on. But are we a political being? Yes, we remain a political being to the extent that we participate in a political environment such as the South African National Military Veterans Association. SANVA is a political structure. And our participation there means that we've got a particular ideological thrust that we want to push within SANVA. Otherwise, what would be the purpose of our participation in SANVA? So I'm saying we must never, ever throw away the political thrust that is associated with the African National Congress or progressive liberation movements for that matter. So I'm saying that would be my definition of what is it that we can be known for political, as opposed to us being strictly known as that body that takes a cue from what the African National Congress does. What it means is that at the point where we think the African National Congress is going astray, we should be able to say, this is not the ANC that we know. The ANC that we know would not do this, would do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me rest there.
Okay, thanks, Comrade Johnny. Moss, or is it Castro first? Sorry, I think so, Moss. I think it's Castro. Castro?
Thanks, Commissar. Actually, I just wanted to respond on the issue of or the question that you raised,
okay.
Which was around the issues that are political. My take is that if we become a structure that becomes political, in a way, we will be creating conditions or will fall into the trap of having to be affected by what affects the mother body politically. We also find ourselves having to be, if there are, say for example, there are factions that emerge, we find ourselves becoming part of those factions. My, that's a personal view. My view is that the structure should remain purely socio-economic, welfare related, as well as emphasizing on the heritage and culture of MK, as much as, especially championing as much as possible our socio-economic development as ex-combatants. Then we go to another level. The level we go to, which is the next level, is that how do we relate then with the ANC? We relate with the ANC, perhaps as Comrade Johnny was saying, that we have that there should be a desk, but those proposals were there before, and they never actually assisted in terms of ensuring that we have an influence or an impact in terms of the trajectory of the movement. And hence, I came with this proposal of the Veterans League that we then engage politically the ANC as part of the Veterans League. That should be our strong assertion. because the Veterans League in this instance is a constitutional structure. It's not about voting, but it's about the trajectory, political and policy trajectory of the movement. And then we should also then go to another level and say, what is our relationship with the state? Our relationship with the state starts with SAMVA, being part of SAMVA, and maybe also then looking at possible alliances within SAMVA so that we could then make a bulkier entity with the liberation, being the Liberation War veterans in alliance with these other entities that were in the liberation struggle, like APLA and Azandla. In the SAMVA environment, then in dealing with the state, particularly when we engage the DMV, because that's where our impact is hugely felt. Again, we should also look at possibilities that as an MK desk within the ANC, with the ANC being the leading political party currently and the party in power, do we have influence maybe in some of the personalities that are within the state, that we can then be in a position of positively impacting on our interest, especially the socio-economic welfare and heritage interests. And then also in terms of the state-owned enterprises, how do we also get ahead, particularly if you look at veterans abroad in other countries? They have a very huge impact in terms of the defense industry. So these are things that we need to investigate when the structure is in place, as in terms of how do we impact on the military industry and benefiting from that as ex-combatants. So those levels are important. Then just to go in as a flood without really defining specific areas, we need to define specific areas of engagement. Thank you.
Awesome. Commissioner Moss, I think this should be a wonderful time for you to hear from you. I mean, especially after Castro as response, he did cover some of the aspects I had in mind, but yeah, let's hear your view, my chief.
Okay, can I talk? Can I come in before Commissioner Moss, because my computer does not allow me to raise my hand.
Sorry.
It's not happening. So it means I just need to come in. Because
I'm sorry, he will understand.
Yes, I'm not gonna say much. I just want to totally agree with the view of Comrade Castro. This is the line of thinking that I was thinking here, because I really do believe that we need to delineate the two approaches, or the two involvements, or the two identities, if you want. It can be like we exist to ensure that advocacy is done and so on, and we make sure that where we do that type of work is very professional. So we really aim at professionalizing it to an extent of indeed ensuring that we do make, I like that point of saying, because when you look at CMVO is in the majority because it's a structure that represents different unitary, if you want, formations within it. It does not have just one, just like ourselves, it's just MK. So I like this approach of saying we can strike those alliances with the former liberation forces, so that it's something that should be formalized and I'm sure even recognized legislatively, so that we can make sure that, you know, we do not all the time be in the minority within SANVA. And the professionalization that I'm talking about, to an extent of really realizing that the people that we represent, when we talk about awareness and so on, we're in the age of social media. We should be able to be hosting a website and those social media platforms to be able to reach out to our constituencies. So indeed, if we can be able to delineate these two, we coexist, yes, the political wing of it, but the socio-economic one as well. But with the socio-economic one, to just make sure that really the way we are covering up even for the time that we have already lost. And then when it comes to the political one, I agree with Comrade Johnny to have that representation within the ANC, because this is how we are going to respond to questions like General Sizan came with these issues on the international platforms of fora, where you can feel that there is bankruptcy of our united voice and a voice that makes an impact, because MK is not contributing, exMK is not contributing on such. You think of issues of our portfolio committees of parliament, especially within the security cluster, where it becomes apparent that actually even people who are in those portfolio committees who are parliamentarians, they do really need assistance at the back office of people who are from these structures or who are from the security cluster in terms of their qualification and experience and so on, to be able to assist them in ensuring that they do that. And MK has many of such. So this is how we can become a resource that we actually are. Yeah, thank you very much for allowing me to patch in.
Thanks, Commissar Sally. Commissar Moss. Moss, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Hear you.
Yeah, now we can. Go ahead, my chief.
Okay, cool. Apologies for that. All I'm saying is, I think we ought to be very alive to the fact that we can't approach these issues mechanically, nor in a manner that is not seeing the dialectical connect. Socioeconomic issues are interlinked with politics. Politics are linked with transformation of society. If that's a critical assumption from which we move, there is no way that we can divorce the structure of MK to deal with those issues. And I can go on, maybe I'll do a write-up rather than just rise here. Why I think we ought to play that structure that emerges. Let us assume on the 25th of April, whether it's elected or nominated, whatever, I don't care. But we have a structure that has leadership with integrity, that has understood strategic tasks. What does it do on the 26th? Now, comrades, what it does on the 26th is not going to be theoretical. It will not be able to deliver houses on the 27th. But it has a duty to prioritize and make sure that houses and socio-economic rights are delivered. So there will be a program that unfolds immediately because we're dealing with a backlog. What happens on the 26th? On the 26th, that structure must be able to be alive to the fact that the ANC is going to conference. Not next year, now. What does the structure say? No, let the ANC unfold and renew. We are not political. It cannot be. Because a dead ANC is a dead of everything that we're doing here. An alive ANC is a mission-critical success factor to a structure that is going to be meaningful in the existence of both MK but also in the lifelong existence of the ANC as a parliament of our people. On the 26th, when we finish and the leadership is now, we say a program of action in terms of reference. They cannot be able to say, we have now to move towards dealing with socio-economic issues of our people, not just our members, because we're integral to society. So there is an immediate task, whether we twist and turn and say we're apolitical for now, we're more socio-economic, that to me is a mechanical issue. And lastly, I want to warn us, we ought to distinguish between strategic objectives and operational and tactical objectives. We can't bundle them together. And my humble suggestion is that for purposes of this discussion, it's more a strategic definition of a structure. Operational issues like how do we make sure we influence SANVA, operational issues of how we relate to the ANC on an ongoing basis must be based on what is the reason for strategic existence of the structure. It must deal with the socio-economic issues. It must assist the ANC not to die. It must assist society to continue with transformation. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner Moss. Maybe one way of looking at this, is there anyone who actually agrees with Commissioner Moss on the view that says this structure must play an active political role as compared to the individuals within this structure playing an active role? So I'm asking that question so that at least it is clear, because the other side is not saying that there should be no political role. It is just saying that role must actually be played in a certain way by individuals, not by the structure itself. So I just want to pose that. Comrade Sandy, your hand has been up for a while.
Oh, Sandy, I thought mine was now.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think we can address what we are. You know, we are like this because, you know, Singele, the ideas and the politics, the ANC. So that one it's very clear. I don't want to deliberate. I think Commissioner Moses put it very clear. Because even if we use these other formations or structures that are legit, that are recognized by the government of the day, those people are in corners. The SADF will speak their own ideology in terms of Bakumagupi. So that one is forgone. We can't do much about it. I think I agree that to formulate what is the purpose of the structure, I think Comrade Ombre has tried to differ and almost has outlined. But I think the biggest thing that I see is that structure. The first thing, it must fight for recognition, because we're not recognized anyway. Recognition of ourselves as a structure, being EMK, as veterans or whatever you call them. But I think we must not put lip service. We are not recognized anywhere, comrades, because for the mere fact that our comrades are rolling Matamak, are dying because of frustration and all those things. Here we are talking to our mother body, who are the government of the day. So I think we must just be straightforward. That's why I agree with whatever structure that emerges on the 26th or the 27th or whatever, those will be there. Firstly, we must forge how are we going to be recognized by the government of the day, by our own mother body, and use other platforms to get to. I think my biggest thing is recognition by our own organization that we are battling with. I don't want to repeat what other comrades have said. And I think, Chairperson, what I realize is, I mean, here people ventilate their own ideas and so on and so on. But for a mere fact that we're not talking in one voice, it tells you, Gucci, we are still a little bit disorganized in terms of we are trying to regroup. Because in 1994, I mean 1992, 1991, when we came back here, it's far down, and we are not organized. So that's my take. I don't want to deliberate. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
No, thanks, Machi. Commissioner Sani, go ahead. Sorry,
Yes.
I didn't see your
Thank
hand.
you so.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Doc. I just want to say, in as much as I agree that we have to keep things at a strategic level, I think the fear that I have is that we normally are able to articulate these things, but when it comes to implementation, we're found wanting because we do not get to a level where we are able to see how are we going to ensure that this thing actually works the way we want it to work. So at the end, it ends up us having had good ideas, but at the end of the day, not having been able to change the lives that we want to change. So I just want to mention that. So for me, it becomes critical that while we are busy thinking about these things, surely we have to think towards the line of saying, surely whatever that we are saying, it's something that we can be able to implement. So the how part becomes important for me.
Yeah. No, thanks, Commissioner. Now, I can tell you, as someone who actually does a lot of interventions, when you develop an intervention, it's always important to actually also ask that question. Now, of course, there's been answers on the political side, and there are two type of answers we have on the table. The first one actually says, yes, we'll take care of politics, but we need a very strong relationship with the Veterans League because they are the ones who are on the table now. I mean, like we did say that the ANC renewal program is moving, it's not waiting for MK. And they are part of that process. They've got a delegation. We are not part of that process. They are there. So that is one proposition that Commissar Castro actually made, and I get a sense that also Brian seems to be aligned with that, and of course Asali. And then there is one view by Commissar Moss, supported by Comrade Sandile, that actually this structure should almost shoot itself to the table, to the ANC table. It must act on as a structure, an active role, instead of as individuals that get deployed in the manner that Castro indicated. So I just want us to narrow these two, so that at least at some point we can have a clarity. At the end, I do think that it is not something we'll be able to resolve here, in my assessment. But we need to probably at least give guidance to the conference, and then they can study and decide how they want to play this. Brian, your hand, is it an old hand or is it a new one?
No, it's a new one. This one I just bought this one.
You come from Uganda. You got the lost one there. Go ahead.
Yeah. Look, I think Comrade Moss has a point, right? But this point is dependent on certain conditions being true. One of them is that you can fully claim to be ANC and have the upper hand to redirect the politics of the ANC only if you're recognized. It's only dependent on that platform existing within the ANC, where they say, MK, what are you saying? Two, that also says, to what extent can you then be part of other structures? If you don't have the recognition, it won't work. And I'll tell you why we're in this dilemma. We're in this dilemma because we've been unable to shake the tree. We are extremely disciplined. That's what our weakness. When we reach a point where we're supposed to act, we prefer to keep quiet, even when things are done wrong in our name. That is our downfall. And I see it continuing because we're saying we are this, but the ANC says you're not. And this is what I think we need to be very, very careful when we navigate, to say we need to talk in terms of our strength. If we don't have the strength, we know that some of these things won't hold true. That's what a point I wanted to make, that it's just a matter of emphasis. But the ANC does not see us the way we think ANC sees us. They don't at all. They actually don't even recognize us completely. So whatever we say is because we've been with the ANC from a very, very rough angle as MK soldiers. But that's not the value that other people see in us. So I just wanted us to so that we take into account this different angle, that the ANC does not see us the way we see ourselves. Sure.
No, thanks, Brian. I think as I give to Castro, the point you have just raised, that was one of the things that I actually had in mind, an image issue, is the fact that when we look ourselves in the mirror, we see ourselves as like this, in these nice and glossy ideas, but eyes, I'm not sure if the ANC does the same. At least there is no evidence that it does so far. So we need to factor that as well, to make sure we are not biased here, looking at things in a manner that is really not realistic. Commissar Castro.
Sorry, actually, no, I wasn't raising any issue in particular, but I just wanted to respond to Comrade Sandile's input that fighting for recognition has been a struggle that we had undertook for a long time as MK. To such an extent that I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was 2007, where ultimately the Veterans League was established. It was established on the grounds that we were fighting to get recognition as MK within the NC constitution and structures. But we were told, you are a dying species, therefore we cannot have you as a league like other leagues. And it was a struggle that made us to be where we are right now, because we are unable really to have an impact or influence as much as we would like to within the ANC as a constitutional structure. Therefore, if we say we want to have that recognition, the question is how. Just now, really, we have struggled, we've tried, we have done our level best to have that recognition being given, but it's not given, as Comrade Brian is saying, and also Comrade Malik are saying, that the ANC doesn't see us as we see ourselves. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commander Mhlongo, go ahead.
Yes, Commissioner. I think maybe the important thing is, I think we're victims of self-deception as former MK comrades. We keep on deceiving ourselves, telling ourselves lies. We tell ourselves lies, and when we are really faced with problems and we're supposed to act, we don't act. Many things have been done in front of us, before us, and we did nothing. We kept quiet. Because some of the comrades were in good government positions and they were okay, they didn't really care. I mean, the issue of the Guptas, the Watsons, it starts from that time, when the issue of Holomisa, when he was expelled for challenging, that former premier of the Transkei, and we said nothing about that, and when actually Holomisa was fired for wrong reason. But what I'm saying, comrades, we are victims of self-deception. We are not honest to ourselves. And this is why we are treated like this. And we will not be recognized because we are waiting for the next order, and sometimes you are waiting for the next order from a crook. You expect the crook to give you the next order, and you are waiting because you want to show you are disciplined. And so I think we are basically mentally, it's mentally where we have a problem. We are mentally damaged. So we need to think out of that box. And if we want to change the ANC, we have to act, within the structures of the ANC, not in the traditional manner that we are waiting for the next order, we're waiting to be given an opportunity to be a branch commissar, we're waiting to be included in the structure. They won't include you because the ANC is captured. And we are not accepting the fact that the ANC is captured. And this is why we're waiting for the next order from the people who captured the ANC. So basically, we're mentally damaged in my mind. According to me, most of MK comrades are mentally damaged. When we said, let's take the issue of MK Trust to court, and the issue of the former Comrade KB, Tumisan, and the others, when the monies of MK Trust were taken, we said, let's go to court. Most of the comrades did not do that, did not act. They kept aloof because they were trying to be disciplined. How do you become disciplined when they are destroying your resources? How do you become disciplined when they are destroying your resources? When somebody is taking all your cattle and you are disciplined, you are leaving that person to take all the cattle out of the crowd and you say you are disciplined. So I'm saying to you, you must think differently from now onwards. Otherwise, you are mentally captured and mentally damaged, most of you. I'm sorry for that. I include myself in that category. I've been a victim waiting for the next order. And so don't think that I'm better than you. But I need to face this reality. The only thing I have at the moment is the question. When we say we must have this new structure as a political structure, how different will it be from the structures that have been there since 94? Because there's been political structures of MK since 94 up to now. How different will it be? And that is the question we must answer. But if it's going to be continuing with the slates and faction battles inside the ANC, I'm afraid it's going to be hopeless. It's not going to help us in any way. Yeah, thank you for now. I'll leave it there. Sorry for all this. I'm sorry for that. Bye-bye.
No, that's fine. Commander Mhlongo. We'll organize counseling. We'll organize counseling. Don't worry. We are trained to do that. Motorman, I'm looking at the time. We need to move it towards the end now. So can you be brief, my chief, and then we take maybe if there is any other voice you haven't heard.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Comrade Malik. The question of your recognition is at the center. And the second question is, how do we get recognized? I partly agree with Commander Mhlongo. The wounds that we carry in the main are self-inflicted, because not necessarily because we are waiting for the next order. I would differ with him from that part, but I would say the new culture that has emerged of the self-centeredness is the one that has crippled us, the ANC in the country. Let me ask a hypothetical question. Do we say really, if we want a recognition, is it only by shaking the tree, or is it by climbing the tree and being on top of the tree and pluck the fruits that are there, then that you get recognition? We should look both at this, what we call. There are some trees that probably need shaking, the Comrade Brian, but there are those that we just needed to, yes, they are already there for taking, but we're not doing that. And when we do that for our own sake. And that is umkhonto wesizwe culture. It's very, very contrary, but that's a new culture. Now, the hypothetical question that I wanted to raise, comrade, to think around this socio-economic desk, whether a structure that would be within the structure newly or to emerge structure, is at the center of even addressing the complicated question that the comrade Moss is raising of the Liberation War veterans. Correctly, as it has been spotted by Comrade Ryan, it's the vacuum that we have created which draws people to do whatever they're doing. But if we climb on top of the tree and deliver on social welfare issues, and if we deliver on economic issues of the comrades and the country, I will emphasize, the hypothetical question is this, comrade, I keep on asking, but I have not yet. Are we saying seriously, in all honesty, the number of OMK that exists now, which has been verified within the database, can't we even form a cooperative bank? A cooperative bank whose what you call task and mandate would be to see to it that all these things, even recognition, comes to the fore, because the ANC would not recognize us unless we prove ourselves before the ANC or the newly elected ANC members to say exactly by ideas, creativity, by impacting on socio-economic challenges that the people who are facing, that the society is facing, that the country is facing. I think, I don't know whether I'm dreaming, that recognition issue will come to the fore. But then, how do we do that? I think the question is still asking. It is therefore very, very critical, going back to Comrade Moses' assertion. If the people that we would put in this new structure are not of the same mind as we are discussing here, surely, what difference would that make? It will be the same, taking the, old wines, put the new bottles, but still the wine is sour. Now, we must be very, very careful on the question of what difference would it make if we go with number game as it is currently. Why don't we insist based on the challenges that were faced, insist on clinging on the military doctrines of identifying.
Let's cut it short, my chief.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Identifying people who will deliver us and the country from this situation. I think that is very, very critical. Thank you, leadership. It's a matter that, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other voice that would like to say something maybe we have not heard on this matter? Any new voice? I see Comrade MacDonald. Go ahead. Comrade MacDonald, go ahead. I think you are muted or not, but we can't hear you if you are talking. Okay. Is there any other hand, any other voice that would actually like to weigh in on this matter before we try to wrap it up? I think when Comrade MacDonald's actually able to hear us, he can obviously go ahead. But I think from a summary point of view, that's what I also just round up, and then of course I'm going to give to Moss to actually also just weigh in and have his closing word. Is that it? Look, it is clear that the politics are the most complicated aspect of our lives. The easiest aspects of our lives is the welfare. Now, as in agreeing about it, we all need bread. We all need jobs. We need roofs over our heads. This there is actually very easy to actually agree on, and we can always, of course, agree on the or disagree on the hows part. But in this case, it's also quite clear that the how is very straightforward, because the how lies with the government. There is a department, there is an act that actually regulates the how, for us to access the type of services that we need. Of course, we haven't actually accessed those services for now, for all these years, for political reasons, not for any other thing. It's mainly political reasons. One, politics weakening MK as a very strong voice to advocate, and raise the awareness issues, as Comrade Johnny has actually said, because we have been weakened. And one thing that actually has happened, they will then lift up one or two among us, make them like a bouncer, on the doors of privilege in some way, and then that creates a bit of a problem. We are silenced by our own. Lastly, on the political side, it is actually quite clear that there is no definite agreement on this structure playing a direct political role, or an indirect for that matter. So I mean, I think it's something that we actually need to continue canvassing on, because it is not clear. I'm like it is not clear. Evidence shows that, one, we do not have the means in terms of the power to do any of the things that we think we want to do politically, because the ANC doesn't see us the way we see ourselves. For sure, evidence is there. No one needs to, evidence is there. And we don't have the means, direct entry in actually playing, in the political power, because we're not a league. We're not even invited in any of these ANC internal processes on renewal that are happening now. So, and then lastly, the Veterans League, for me, though it's ideal, the reality is that it's full of people who actually denied us in the best of times special pensions, because they qualified, and if and they didn't care about those who couldn't actually even qualify, about special pensions then. And I see the criteria that they actually have there, and their rigidity on that is actually not different from their exclusionary view. I do not think that it will be easy to change them, but even if they do change, there is a problem of time. They will actually need to exist in terms of a conference. So to get to that conference is going to take time. In that time, the train of the ANC is moving towards the cliff. And we will then have to find other ways of reaching out to the ANC in that sense. So I think for me, that's effectively how actually we would like to leave it. Let me just check again. Comrade McDonald, are you able to talk to us now? Would love to hear your voice. I see your hand is still up, but we can hear nothing of you. So I don't know whether there is a problem with the mic or anything. Shongo, are you gonna make it snappy, and then I give back to Moss to actually have his last word?
Yes, it's just a short comment on the Veterans League.
Yes.
My view is that comrades of MK can participate in the Veterans League in all activities except for elections, that's all. So in terms of contributing policies in the Veterans League, I think there's nothing really that stops members of MK from participating and doing all that. The only thing maybe that will be barred from because of your age, because they see you're still younger and fresh as compared to some of us, is elections. So except for elections. Everything else you can participate in my view. So I would encourage you as a former MK comrade to actually participate in the Veterans League. I would encourage you to participate. The only thing you'll be excluded from is from being elected as a chairman of the Veterans League branch or secretary. But all other things you can participate. You can present proposal, get involved in political discussions. Nobody will stop you. You can't be bent from political discussions. So I'll leave it there for now. But that's my view, that you can actually participate in the Veterans League, except for elections. Thank you.
No, thanks, Mhlongo. Just one quick question. Can you be sent by the Veterans League, for instance, to actually be part of a delegation to a policy conference of the ANC? Because the Veterans League will have a delegation there. Now, someone like myself, a young lion, not is sitting at 36 years or whatever, ANC, but not 60 yet, and not 40 years, in the ANC. Can that participation you're talking about allow people like those to actually be sent as delegates to a policy conference?
Well, as delegate, the definition of a delegate is another thing. But to go and participate in a conference as part of the delegation from the Veterans League, and you are going to present a paper, I don't think there's anybody who will stop you from presenting a paper to the Veterans League meeting. I don't think there's anybody who will stop you from that. Presenting a paper to the Veterans League branch or Veterans League conference, I don't think there'll be anybody stopping you from that. If your paper is required and we think that it will add value, you will be invited, because why should we ban you from listening to what you have if we don't know what you have and we want to tap from your wisdom? So my view, that is my view, of course, that I don't think there should be a problem for you to be part of the delegation to go and present the discussion paper. It's only for you to be a chairperson of the branch or secretary of a branch,
okay,
where maybe the constitution might say, no, you are not above 60, no, you don't have 40 years of continuous service. That's my view at the moment, Comrade Malik,
okay,
Commissioner.
No, that's fine. Thanks, Mhlongo. I see Comrade Tuso there. General Tuso, how are you, General Ford? You're still handsome, even if we can't hear you. But that's good. You're aging well. You're aging well,
I forgot the mic is off.
Yeah, no, you're aging well. Is there any other comrade before I hand over to Moss who hasn't said anything who would like to reflect on what we're talking about? I don't know. Comrade McDonald, are you still struggling with your mic? Okay. General Ford, did you want to say anything? I don't know. It looks like you came in at the tail end.
Yeah, no, you know what? I actually forgot. I was busy and then I forgot. Then I remembered, hey, by the way, there's this meeting tonight.
Okay.
But anyway, I'll catch up from some of the comrades. And then,
no, that's fine. We can always talk on the side after this.
Yeah.
Great seeing you.
Yeah.
Most, I think, in the absence of anyone who hasn't said anything and would like to say anything, so maybe you can give us your last word on these issues. Commissioner Moss.
His mic is off.
Yeah. I'm starting to worry whether the problem is not on my side or what. Moss, are you there?
The problem is probably
His mic is
on
off.
his side. Yeah.
Oh, his mic is off. So even if
we can hear you.
Hear you. Hey. His mic is off.
Comrade Moss.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, I've just sent him a message now.
Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you. I think I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. No, thanks. I'll try to be brief, comments. I think we are all at one that, to the best of our ability, we try to answer the question, the rhetorical question, on the purpose and reason for existence of this plan. And I think that there we were at one that we need this. There's no debate about it. Because then there must be some structural way of championing advocacy and all these things we want to do. They need champions in the must be structure. The second thing that we are consenting on is that in order for the structure to be effective, with myself, men of integrity, whether we come by election or by appointment or whatever, based on the packet of efforts.
And women.
Yeah, no, sense that, as usual. Men and women of impeccable integrity, who I think with the generations that we know from Mutulu to the young lions, we can be able to say these are fit for purpose. So there's no more emphasis per se on election as a thrust, but getting integrity to leadership. I think they were consenting as well. 3, we're also consenting around the fact that for us to be able to do the work of, first, we're saying, when that structure exists, it must have privatization of its work. Its mandate must be to speak to an urgent redress of the socio-economic situation facing our cadres as an immediate problem of action. Accompanied to that must also be understanding that we're doing that in a political context that is highly contaminated, that is within the very motherhood, which ought to give expression to the address of those who government. Because the ANC can't build houses, the ANC can't develop education, but it has to then be strong enough to compel government employees to do. We are consenting about the fact that there is a need that the ANC must be pushed to actually make sure that politically it drives its employees consciously and monitor them to deliver effectively. But the danger we have then in that context is that the ANC as it stands now does not see us the way we see ourselves. I think that came also very clear, and I think we have to speak about it. We've been kept in the margins of history from 1994, and as we move along, we're moving further into the periphery of influencing the policy trajectory, the strategic direction of the liberation movement. And therefore, the issue of the structure when it comes in is to aggressively push the issue of recognition. And that recognition, I think I read it subject to correction, can be multiple. Tactics that can be used are not one dimension. We can leverage the opportunity of the Veterans League with all proposals we can make to adjust certain amendments to its constitution to allow meaningful MK participation through the Women's League, the Veterans League, to influence the direction of the ANC as a constitution. We're also consenting on the matter that says, having said that there is a critical political role in that context, the Veterans League is not the only vehicle for not being an advocate. I think we didn't canvass the point, but we're all clear along the terrain that there's other alliance partners who must be the voice that carries this issue of recognition. We have the SACP and the alliance. We've got the youth leagues of this world. We've got the women's league of this world, who we must actually push together to be a critical mass to fight for recognition, firstly of our contributions, and secondly, our voice being heard in the ANC. So we're saying we use various tactics and various potential strategic partners to be able to make us be recognized. There's no dispute about it. Recognition is mission critical success factor for us to make an impact on the all that we want to do. And last but not least, comments, I think we're also consenting about the fact that we've reached a point where the process is unfolding now. We must be very conscious of their policy, their conference preparations of the ANC, from branch level, regional level, zone level, upwards up to national, which are going to be critical on whether the chain was starting is going to succeed. Because if it doesn't find its expression in December, in MK being recognized and his voice being heard, then you might as well kiss this chain goodbye. So there is a consensus that the structure must mainstream us meaningfully to the ANC processes to influence the direction of the ANC, to hear us, to recognize us, and to implement what we are putting on the table. And in that context, then I think, as you are also suggesting, that the conference should deliberate on matters that we're not consenting on. We're not going to face this business in this meeting. And we must, therefore, as we prepare our paper on the structure, its mandate, its design, we might have to take other issues for further clarification by conference. I think I've tried to summarize essentially what is more common than different. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner Moss. Comrades, we have actually come to the end of this session. Now, in terms of what's going to happen next, is that we will be able to consolidate everything we've had here today and in other days as well, and produce a draft constitution, because this effectively talks to the opening part of the constitution, the mission and the purpose, and of course the objectives and all those type of things. The other parts, we actually covered those last week in terms of the layout, the organogram, as we proposed, and of course a week before, we covered other aspects as well. So we will be collating those, and in the process, we will be able to highlight in the proposed draft constitution those areas that need further investigation, and we will, make sure that we effectively don't misrepresent in that process. And to ensure that we don't misrepresent, I think in about a week we will then post. Of course, we're gonna give these to the PrepCom, right? But we will also advise the PrepCom that we would like comrades to interact with these documents, even if they have them. And in that process, we will then post these documents in a website that we have. It's an MK Support and Advocacy website. We did put it down, but we're going to put it up and actually have all these documents where comrades can actually go there, download them, access them, and leave comments on them, to make sure that at least this process does not end here, and now, and we can be able to continue to enrich all these documents. So that's effectively that. And of course, one of the things then that we'll actually be looking at as the Committee on Strategic Dialogue is to actually then look at the ANC having covered most, if not all, of the issues we wanted to cover on the MK conference. So we're going to pivot possibly back to the ANC. I mean, since September, we've been pushing these, ANC related topics, and then of course MK related topics. Now that the policy work is getting finalized, we will then probably go back to the ANC, and maybe there we can still continue with some of these nice topics where we can actually invite the ANC themselves, and get a sense of how can we actually participate in their processes, and not feel like we are the poor cousins as we do feel. So I just thought that maybe I should just give that from a process point of view. Brian, I see your hand is up much if you wanted to slap me or propose closure, which I was about to accept.
Yeah, it's closer, but there's one little thing that I want to raise. It's nothing to do with today's discussion, but it's to do with the unfolding discussions that we have. That we still have the us and them kind of narrative that has been pushed by some of our comrades. but this effort is still being seen as a council effort than an MK effort. At some point, we need to deal with this issue because it's how we prepare to go to conference. So it's not I'm not opening a discussion, but I'm just saying those that are mandated to run with these discussions, let's maybe find a way of how do we reflect on this particular matter. Sure.
No, thanks. I mean, I think Commissioner Castro did post an invitation in our planning group to MK members organized by Comrade Gorbachev from the MKMVA Johannesburg. I think it's somewhere there. I did speak to him as we're starting this process here to say, is there another process or not? How do we bring these processes together? He did say to me that he did reach out to Ray and he did reach out to Comrade Ish. Now, Comrade Ray, Comrade Ish, and myself, at some point we were working closer with MKMVA in Gauteng, trying to bridge the gap because the fights are not about bread and butter issues, they're about ANC politicians and their jobs and how they use us to make sure that we actually fight. So we have some form of a cordial relationship, but that caught us, certainly myself, off guard. And Ray is not here, but hopefully he will then be able to give us a better understanding of that process. But one of the things that I think as a committee we'll have to discuss is whether is there any danger in sharing our documents with them if they can accept them. They can debate them as well, in their own format, because other people are not able to dial in because of data and technology. And so knowledge is there to be challenged, and the best idea must win, and the weaker one must die. For me, that's effectively my attitude. If they've got better ideas, we should embrace those ideas, irrespective of where they come from. And that's effectively that. But if they've got inferior ideas, they must be open to take superior ideas, and we all feel better. So I thought, let me just address that head on, so that at least you know that we are aware of some of those other processes that are taking place, and we should be able to close that flank and make sure that we are not weakened by those type of processes. Thank you very much.
Fine. I'm covered. Thank you.
Awesome.
Malik,
are you proposing closer, my chief? Is that what you're doing?
No,
proposing closer?
I'm just raising a concern. In your summary, I don't hear you mentioning the proposal that we should receive counseling from Comrade Omri. I haven't heard you.
He's going to give it to me, so he's going to give it to me. So we're going to include it as part of the benefits, my chief. So you'll get free counseling.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Thank you.
Can I get someone seconding closure?
Propose
closure.
Comrade Moto can phone me on my dollar side. I'll provide.
Amanda!
Away too.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Hey, Chata.
Thank you.
Comrade
Yeah,
Moto,
stay safe.
I'm available.
Stay safe,
available
comrades.
on my dollar side.
Cheers.
Okay.
General Tuso, can you stay behind? I just want to catch up with you a bit.
Okay.
I can see you like the grot money, man. I see you like the grot money, and but if you drink something, please leave something for me, a bottle or close, please leave a bottle for me also.
Now we'll make sure you have some. We have got a bit of umpandola, so you will actually have a little bit of that. Yeah. Otherwise, my general, how are you?
I'm struggling to get into the new routine.
Retirement. Are you on retirement now or not?
I am on retirement.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, it's now you have got all the time in the world.
Yes, although I find myself with less time than when I was working.
Okay, because you've got to do like lots of dog walking
You know, all of those stuff.
and start being the like at home you're not a general at all. I mean, like I do dishes here. After this I still have to do my chores. I mean, I've got my own general at home.
I was just gonna say, at home I'm the subordinate.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, but great. Seeing you. You know, I'm going to try and make sure that we actually just do our coffee soon. I do hope to be back in the country, possibly on time for the conference around the 20th, some of them.
Okay.
Yeah. But Leke,
Okay,
look after yourself.
You too.
Hey, tada. Ciao.
Good night, everybody.
Okay, good night. Cheers.